Hey guys, welcome to Motsoko. In today's video, we are covering the topic of inclined strata, topography associated with inclined strata. Okay, first of all, the topic itself should tell you what we're going to talk about, right? So understanding the topic is key. Understanding what inclined strata means will help you in everything, right? Because remember, in my previous video, I did topography associated with horizontal strata. Horizontal means that it lies flat. You see this one? This one is flat. It lies flat. This is horizontal. And I told you guys that strata means layers of rock. When I did horizontal, the layers of rock were flat. But now I am moving on to inclined strata. With inclined strata, the word inclined should tell you that the topography or the landform is going to be tilted. It is going to be tilted. Can you see this landform? It is not straight. It is at an angle. It is at an angle, right? So when we deal with inclined strata, you should know that we are going to be dealing with landforms which are at an angle. They are tilted at an angle, right? And strata refers to layers of rock. Now, these inclined strata are caused by tectonic forces, right? If you remember from grade 10, we had these forces. We had warping, folding, and faulting, right? And faulting. These three tectonic forces are the reason why we have inclined strata, right? Another thing that you need to know before we dive deep into this topic is that can you see these lines which I drew here? They represent my hard resistant rock, right? My hard resistant rock, and the underlying rock will be softer compared to this one, right? And then you need to know the difference between a dip slope and a scarp slope. Right now you're going to know about a dip slope and a scarp slope. Let me put letter A on this side and B on the other side, right? Now in the question paper, they like to ask this question. In almost every paper where they ask about inclined strata, they ask you to firstly identify slopes A and B. In this case, A is my dip slope. A is my dip slope. A dip slope is the gentle slope. It is the gentle slope. This is the dip slope. A dip slope is the gentle slope. Now look at the slope at B. It is a steep slope. The steep slope is the scarp slope. The steep slope is the scarp slope. S for steep. Scarp slope. S for steep. The scarp slope is the steep slope. Deep slope is the gentle slope, right? This is how you can easily identify a dip slope and a scarp slope. You just look at the hard resistant rock, right? The dip slope lies above it. Can you see that? This is above my hard resistant rock. Can you see that? Above my hard resistant rock, that's where I have a dip slope. And then you can see where I just have the edge, the small part of the hard rock. Yes, now this side will represent the scarp slope. On top of the hard rock is the dip slope, right? At the edge, right at the side where there's the edge, this is the scarp slope. This is the scarp slope. But above the hard rock, you know that that side is the dip slope. It is the dip slope, right? Now, inclined stratas, they are classified based on the angle in which they dip. Let me explain what I'm talking about, right? Let me just remove some of these things to avoid confusion. We know that this side, the steep slope, is the scarp slope, right? And we know that this gentle one on the top is the dip slope. It is the dip slope. It is the dip slope. Now, when we classify, how do we classify? How do we classify our homoclinal ridges, right? We need to classify them. They are classified according to the angle of dip. Angle of dip. My homoclinal ridges are classified according to the angle of dip, right? You can tell the difference between homoclinal ridges by looking at the angle at which they dip. What do I mean by this, right? This is my landform, right? This is my landform. Now I'm going to draw a line there, a dash line. It is imaginary, right? Now this angle on this side where we have our dip slope, can you see that from this horizontal line which I just drew, this broken line, this broken horizontal line towards my hard rock, can you see this angle? Can you see that? That is the angle at which the landform dips, the angle of dip. Now we will look at this angle. Let's say this angle was 10 degrees to 25 degrees, right? We know that landform is number one, a Cuesta. So with our homoclinal ridges, we look at the angle at which it dips. If it dips at 10 degrees to 25 degrees, we call that homoclinal ridge a Cuesta. We have a second one known as a homoclinal ridge. Another one known as a homoclinal ridge. And then we have a third one known as a Hogbacks. Hogbacks ridge. Remember, I told you we classify them according to the angle of dip. I told you if the angle of dip, it is the angle of dip, right? If it is between 10 degrees to 25 degrees, then we know it is the first one. This is a Cuesta. We call it a Cuesta, right? As you can see, my dip slope is gentle. And my scarp slope is steep. If I divide it into half like this, can you see I'm dividing it into half? If you look at this portion of the landform, it is less than this one on this side. I'm just referring to the angle, right? I'm not talking about whether it is a soft rock or a hard rock. I'm just referring to the angle, right? This angle is gentle, this one is very steep, right? So we say it is asymmetrical. Remember, when something is symmetrical, it means what you get on this side will be the same as what you get on this side. But as you can see, on this side I have a much steeper angle. On this side it is very gentle. So our Cuesta is asymmetrical. It is not symmetrical, right? The angle is not the same on both sides. We say the Cuesta is asymmetrical. Number one, we know that it is between 10 degrees to 25 degrees. So if the angle of dip here, let's say I said between 10 to 25. Let's say it was 17 degrees. Can you see 17 degrees is between 10 to 25, so it is a Cuesta. Can you see that? The second one is a homoclinal ridge. Number one is the Cuesta. The second one is known as a homoclinal ridge, even though it's a type of homoclinal ridge. And then the third one is the Hogbacks ridge, right? But let's just go to the second one. I want you guys to notice the changes now. Oh, this is a freehand drawing, so obviously it will not be perfect. I'm sure you can see that the angle of the dip now, of this dip slope, is becoming slightly steeper than the first one, right? Remember, at first it was gentle. Now you see it's dropping, it's dipping. And I told you, on top, this is my hard rock, right? My hard resistant rock. I told you above it, this side at the top, above it, this is where I have my dip slope. And then this steep slope is known as the scarp slope. I told you when we classify them, or when we tell the difference between them, right, we look at the angle of dip. This is my dip slope, so let me draw my imaginary line, the horizontal one. Can you see it? Dot, 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 dot. Now I need to look at this angle, the angle at which it dips. The first one, the Cuesta, was 10 degrees to 25 degrees. Now if the angle is between 25 degrees to 45 degrees, then it's the second one. It is a homoclinal ridge. 25 degrees to 45 degrees is my homoclinal ridge. You see, remember I told you we classify them according to angle. Now I know if I have 25 to 45, it is a homoclinal ridge. Now let's go to the last one and look at the angle there. Let's go to our Hogbacks ridge. Let's go to our Hogbacks ridge. Remember, I told you above the hard rock is where I have my dip slope, and then this side where I have the edge, this side will be my scarp slope. Now the Hogbacks ridge is now the Hogbacks ridge is usually or generally greater than 45 degrees, right? And you can see that this one, the dip slope is very steep. So for my Hogbacks ridge, the third one, the dip slope is greater than 45 degrees. Yes, it dips at an angle that is greater than 45 degrees. Can you see that? There's my imaginary line again, horizontal line. And then it dips at an angle that is greater than 45 degrees. And as you can see, my dip slope is very steep on this one, right? My dip slope is very steep. Remember, normally I told that the scarp slope is steep. Now for my Hogbacks ridge, even the dip slope is steep. Now look at this. When I cut it into half, right, the angle is almost the same, right? That's why we say that a Hogbacks ridge is symmetrical. It is symmetrical. Symmetrical means that what I get on this side, I get on the other side. Now in this case, I'm not referring to the type of rock, I'm just referring to the angle, right? The angle is almost the same, right? That's why we say that a Hogbacks ridge is symmetrical. The dip slope is steep, just as the scarp slope is also steep on my Hogbacks ridge. Remember, on the Cuesta, the dip slope was gentle. Now I drew the three diagrams. I have diagram A, diagram B, and diagram C, right? Classify our homoclinal ridges based on the angle of dip. This one dips at 10 degrees to 25 degrees, right? This one dips at 10 degrees to 25 degrees. We know that's our Cuesta. And we know that it is asymmetrical. Number two, this one dips at 25 degrees to 45 degrees. This is our homoclinal ridge. And then C, this one is dips at an angle that is greater than 45 degrees. And now this one is our Hogbacks ridge. Now, for exam purposes, they usually make you compare between A and C, the Cuesta and the Hogbacks, right? So let's say, for instance, in the exam you get only two diagrams, right? Just know that those two diagrams is a Cuesta and a Hogbacks, but provided that you are not given the angle. If they give you a diagram with no angle, and then you're not sure whether the second one is a homoclinal or Hogbacks, right? It is usually the Hogbacks ridge, right? But if the angle is there, then you obviously just use these angles. Now let's go back to the Cuesta, the first one. Let's go to the Cuesta. The Cuesta can either be a Cuesta dome or a Cuesta basin let me just quickly use diagrams to show you the difference between a Cuesta basin and a Cuesta dome, right? So a Cuesta basin, let me just draw my hard rock, right? This is my hard rock. I'm sure you can already see that it has a circular depression, right? Depression means you can see how it's sinking. It's not a straight line, it's a circular depression, right? Here's my next layer of hard rock. There's my hard rock. Followed by a layer of my less resistant rock, right? I'm sure you can see that. Look at my hard rock, right? It is a circular depression. You see how it's almost like it's sinking. It's not straight. This one is supposed to sink also. Can you see that? Circular depressions, right? Now let me just draw my Cuesta dome, right? For Cuesta dome, you must know that the hard rock is facing upwards. Can you see that? This hard rock is now facing upwards. For my Cuesta dome, the hard rock faces upwards. Now these two diagrams, Number 1 represents my basin, number 2 represents my dome, right? The best way to tell the difference is by looking at the dip slope and the scarp slope. The dip slope and the scarp slope. But I want you guys to look at the dip slope first. Let's look at the dip slope, because if you can find the position of the dip slope, then obviously we'll know where the scarp slope is, right? Remember what I told you about the dip slope. I said the dip slope is on top of the hard rock. You see that above it I have my dip slope. Can you see that? Which means that on this side now, on the side here where I have this small edge of the rock, it will be my scarp slope. It will be my scarp slope. Now this is how you will remember. This is how you will remember. Focus on your dip slope. For my Cuesta basin, the dip slope faces inwards. It faces inwards. Dip slope faces in. You can see that it faces in. This is inside. The dip slope faces inwards. This is how you remember. The word basin has the letter I. The word basin is the letter I. The word dip has the letter I. Cuesta basin dips inwards. It dips inwards. And then the scarp slope faces outwards. That's how you must tell the difference. Let's talk about the dip slope and the scarp slope. I told the dip slope will be above the hard rock. Can you see that? So for my Cuesta basin, look at the dip slope first. Then obviously the scarp slope will be the opposite. The dip slope for my Cuesta basin, the dip slope faces inwards. The word basin has the letter I. Dip has the letter I. Inwards, letter I. For my Cuesta basin, the dip slope faces inwards, and then the scarp slope, here's the scarp slope on this side. The scarp slope faces outwards. Let's go to our dome. I told you the dip slope is above the rock. This is the hard rock, right? Dip slope is above the rock. Dip slope is above the rock. This is on top of it, right? Now this is my dip slope, which means that on the inside here, I have my scarp slope. Above this rock, above it is my dip slope. Above it is my dip slope, which means that inwards will be my scarp slope. So for my Cuesta dome, the dip slope faces outwards. It faces outwards. You can see the dip slope is outwards, which means that obviously the scarp slope is inwards. So we look at the dip and the scarp. Okay, let's just do one short activity, right? Number 1, let's identify slopes A and B. I won't write down the questions, right? Identify slopes A and B respectively, right? Identify slopes A and B respectively. 1.1. Respectively means that you must give the answer in that order. They said A and B respectively. What is A? Yes, that's good. A is the dip slope. I told you above the hard rock is the dip slope. B is the scarp slope. And now question 1.2. Listen to question 1.2. Give one characteristic of part labeled C. One characteristic of part labeled C. When you give a characteristic, how do you give it? For example, let's say you're giving a characteristic of your friend. You say your friend has big eyes, your friend is short, your friend is tall. Now I am giving a characteristic of a rock. We know this is a rock. What can you tell me about this rock? Right? What can you tell me about this top rock? I've been saying it throughout the video. This is the hard resistant rock. It's a hard rock, right? So that's the characteristic of this part labeled C. We know this is a rock, but what can you tell me about the rock? It is a hard resistant rock. That's how you give a characteristic, right? It's like you are describing it. It's a hard resistant rock. That's one characteristic, right? Okay, now another question which was very interesting. Does slope A or B have a high erosion tempo? Does slope A or B have a high erosion tempo? When I speak about erosion tempo, I'm referring to the speed of erosion. Which one can erode faster, A or B? A or B? Let me draw B nicely so you can see it properly, right? A or B, which one is a higher erosion tempo, right? The answer there has to be B. It has to be B. Let me explain why. It has to be B. Remember, A is above this hard rock. Hard rocks are more resistant to erosion, which means that they will erode slower, right? So the answer has to be B. And the reason is that B is much steeper. The reason why it's so steep is because it erodes faster. Remember, this rock is soft rock. It's a softer rock. Let me just say it is less resistant. It is less resistant. Whereas the one at the top is a hard resistant rock. It is more resistant. So obviously B, can you see B? Although the small portion of B is hard rock, but below it is a less resistant rock, which means that it erodes faster. You can see that because B, it is steeper. It is steeper. The less resistant rock is exposed and therefore erodes faster, right? Another very interesting question which they asked was the significance of homoclinal ridges. Homoclinal ridges to settlement. To what? To settlement, transport, mining, and farming. What is the significance? It was a paragraph question, right? Right, on the significance of inclined strata on settlement, transport, mining, and farming. On settlement, obviously, it is going to be difficult or expensive to construct houses, right? On inclined strata, we are saying it is difficult and expensive, right? To build on inclined strata. People prefer gentle topography to save money, right? On transport, it is obviously going to be difficult to construct roads on steep slopes such as the scarp slope, right? So with influence, don't only give answers on negative things, there are positives as well, right? Although for transport it's going to be difficult to construct on steep slopes, but the gaps between our inclined strata can be used for transport. For mining, valuable resources are going to be exposed. Our Cuesta dome, with our uplifted topography, our Cuesta dome, right? That uplifts valuable minerals and oils which can be mined, right? So our inclined strata is very important because valuable minerals, right, and oils become exposed and they can be mined, right? Although it is very difficult to mine because of the inclined strata, but nevertheless there is valuable minerals being exposed. With farming, farming is difficult obviously along the steep slopes, and remember, with Cuesta basins, water can accumulate inside there and farmers can use that water for irrigation, right? So when we ask you about the influence, we're not only asking about negatives, it can also include some positives here and there, right? Okay, let me just stop there for now.